She told me she was going to yoga, and I believed her because who lies about stretching? That's how Tuesday started, a glass of tap water, my laptop fan wheezing like an asthmatic pigeon, and her in black leggings tying her hair into a ponytail that looked like a question mark. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek like a receipt, proof of purchase, zero affection. I said, "Namaste," which is funny now, because nothing stayed. By noon my emails multiplied like rabbits in a magician's hat. I answered half, then drifted to her Instagram. A boomerang of an empty studio mirror. No reflection. Just a caption with a sparkle emoji. I stared at the mute loop and felt an itch I couldn't scratch with logic. I thought about the weekend, how she'd laughed too loud at a joke that wasn't a joke, how she started wearing lipstick the color of ripe pomegranates, how she kept her phone face down like a sleeping snake. The first seed of suspicion sprouted in a very specific way, a smell. Not perfume, not sweat. Something like lemon lozenges dissolved in old cologne. A grandfather's aftershave wearing a Halloween costume as confidence. I'd smelled it on her scarf 2 nights ago and told myself it was the taxi. The seed didn't care what I told myself. It broke soil, folded light into leaf, and asked for water. At 3 I decided to be dramatic in a small way. I took my keys and went to the yoga studio. I don't do confrontation, I do accidentally show up and hope fate writes the script. The receptionist had bangs sharp enough to commit a misdemeanor. "Class started at 1, she said, chewing a pen cap. "And?" I asked, pretending I lived by a mysterious timetable. "And your friend isn't here," she said. "Which friend?" I asked, because I'm loyal to bad lies. "The one with the pomegranate lipstick," she said, and I felt my face convert oxygen into disbelief. "Maybe she switched classes," I said. "She did," the receptionist replied, scrolling. "She switched to nights." "With the senior group." Senior group. The phrase hovered in the air like a balloon nobody wanted to claim. "Like, over 40? I asked. The receptionist pointed at the corkboard. A flyer smiled back at me, gentle stretch for ages 55 plus, in partnership with Golden Horizons Active Living. A photo of a man in a velour tracksuit did warrior pose inside a living room full of porcelain animals. I swear I heard a trumpet. I swear I heard my pride trip over a footstool. I texted her. "How's yoga?" The typing bubble blinked, then vanished like a magician's rabbit. "Great," she wrote. "Sweaty." I sniffed the air around me like a detective who specializes in betrayal aromas. Lemon lozenges, distant but present, like a melody you can't place. After everyone left, she sat on the couch and said, "I'm sorry I made you fight phantoms." I sat on the floor and said, "I'm sorry I made you audition for love." We didn't kiss like a movie. We kissed like two people who know that breath can be work. Tonight I'm writing this at the kitchen table that used to wobble and now doesn't. She's in the bedroom, humming, bad at it, wonderful. The basil is dramatic. The sky can't decide. My laptop fan still wheezes, but I have oil now, literal and otherwise. You want a neat ending. Everyone does. Here it is, she cheated on me with a 60-year-old man, and I didn't become a statue. I stayed human, which is Messier. I told the truth, which is boring until it saves you. I kept breathing on purpose. And sometimes, when I pass a bowl of mints, I take 2. But this isn't a redemption arc smoothed by fairy dust. She still scrolls late. I still check shadows for monsters shaped like silver hair. Trust grows back like a slow forest, and some stumps never green again. When we pass the Golden Horizons gym, my heart sets off a car alarm. Sometimes I drive the long way home to avoid the pharmacy and its white coat ghosts. And yet, there are mornings now where her ponytail looks like an exclamation mark, not a question. There are afternoons where I forget to be vigilant and remember to be funny. There are nights when the distance between us is measurable in breaths, not in rooms. We plant basil in a pot and argue about whether it's overwatered or just dramatic. We build shelves and fail. We invite friends to mispronounce wines. We live in the crossfade between who we were and who we're trying to be. Last week, I bought lemon lozenges on purpose. I let one dissolve on my tongue until the ghost of him stopped being a villain and started being a plot device. On the walk home, the sky had that late summer indecision: does it want to storm or show off? A neighbor waved from his Jaguar, and I waved back like a civilized animal. Progress looks like nothing until it's all you can see. Sometimes I think about Victor. He'll turn 70 in 10 years if time behaves. He'll still call someone champ. He'll still believe in hydration. Maybe he'll teach another person how to hit something that can't hit back. Maybe he'll be alone. Maybe he won't. I wish him good knees and fewer ellipses. And sometimes I think about that first smell on her scarf, the way it cut through the perfume of our denial. Scent is a time machine. It took me somewhere I didn't want to go and dropped me in a room where I had to choose who I was without applause. I didn't win. That's not the right word. I didn't lose either. I learned how to hold contradictions without letting them eat dinner first. If you need the trashy part, here it is. A week after we burned the email, we hosted karaoke in our half-painted living room. Someone spilled wine on the rug. Someone sang an 80s ballad with an earnestness that could have rescued a small village. At midnight, our neighbor put on a saxophone track I hate, and she pulled me into a ridiculous dance. We knocked into a lamp. We knocked into each other. We laughed like people who had earned the right to laugh. At the end of the song, the room clapped and somebody yelled for an encore, because apparently life comes with sequels. I hit the bag like it had paid for her lipstick. I hit until my arms petitioned for independence. He held the bag. He took my fury and anchored it to something that wasn't fantasy. After, we sat on the floor, sweat making new countries on the mat. He told me about grief that doesn't end, it just migrates. I hated how good he was at sentences. I hated that my knuckles wanted to shake his hand. Then she arrived. She walked into the boxing room wearing jeans and a top the color of good decisions. She looked at me, then at him, then at the bag I dented with my wanting. I told him, she said. I told him everything. Everything is a big word. It felt like a curtain dropping. I didn't clap. We went for coffee, me, her, and the man who'd rehearsed this scene in other lives. The cafe had a chalkboard sign that said, "Today's special, closure," which felt like a prank from the universe. She spoke first. I started seeing him, she said. Not like that, not all the way, but enough to redraw the map. I felt alive when he listened. I felt like I had chapters left. I wanted to tell her I had chapters too. I wanted to tell her I'd read every one if she'd stop writing in invisible ink. Instead, I stirred my coffee until it developed weather. Victor said, "If I'm the reason, I'll step back." She shook her head. "You're a mirror," she said to him. Then she turned to me. "You're the home I never redecorated because I was afraid of where to put the couch." "I'm not furniture," I said. "I know," she said, and cried. I used to think tears were the truth. They're just water auditioning. But something in her face was new: terror, yes, and also humility, the kind that settles on the tongue like snowfall. I had choices, and I hate choices because they are mirrors too. 1. Throw a grenade into my life and walk away like an action hero. 2. Pretend it never happened, which is a fork labeled cowardice. 3. Make a fourth choice: build something new on land I already owned. So I made the fourth. It looked like this. I asked her to come with me to my grandmother's empty house, full of wallpaper that had survived wars. We spent a weekend fixing it. We peeled layers off the walls until yellow flowers gave way to blue stripes, gave way to plaster that had heard more prayers than we'd said in a year. We dragged a couch into a room with too much sky. We argued about paint like people who plan to live. We made a list. We made a meal that tasted like beginnings. She deleted Victor's number while I watched. That matters. She blocked him. That matters too. He sent one last email from an address that sounded like a yacht: "Proud of you both. Remember your breath." I printed it. I burned it in the sink. The smoke smelled like lemon lozenges trying to be incense. Days became a slideshow that refused to advance. I worked. I watched her phone light up with late messages, proud of you today. Remember your breath. Tomorrow's the sauna demo. I learned new muscles in my face, the ones that hold back volcanic eruptions. Then Friday arrived, laughing like a villain, and fate sent me a push notification, my bank app, alerting me to a charge at Jaguar Classics Detailing. We don't drive a Jaguar. We drive a dented hatchback that believes in resilience. I clicked the receipt. Her card. A note, thank you, V. My name does not start with V. I went to his pharmacy. Not the small one near the river, the big one attached to an everything store, the kind with a seasonal aisle so chaotic it feels like a failed time machine. Victor stood at the consultation counter, wearing a white coat like an apology. He saw me. He smiled. He didn't look guilty because men like him don't do guilty, they do generous. Champ, he said, and somehow I let him keep calling me that. You look dehydrated. I'm here to return your mentorship, I said. He motioned to a side room. A nurse waved at me with the same compassion I reserve for expired coupons. He shut the door and leaned against a cabinet like it had sworn fealty. She told me you two are in a rough patch, he said, eyes soft. I'm not here to make it messy, eh? You're not here, I said. You are here, in every room of my house, because your smell is resourceful. He laughed, a single ha that sounded like a coin hitting marble. Look, he said, I lost everything at 48. Wife laughed. Business sank. I rebuilt. I learned how to make people better, starting with myself. She's smart. She's stuck. I'm teaching her momentum. Teaching, I said. Like a class? Do I audit? He shrugged. You could come to boxing, he offered. Saturday. We hit heavy bags and talk boundaries. It's good for men. I don't want a circle, I said. I want my life. He nodded as if I'd said the only true sentence in the world. Then fight for it. Against you? I asked. Against the version of yourself that thinks you're owed anything, he said, and I hated him for how right it sounded. Saturday came anyway. I went to boxing because stubbornness is just hope with bruises. The room smelled like rubber and there were posters of champions who never met us and wouldn't have cared if they did. Victor wrapped my hands. He did it gently, like a father teaching a son how not to break himself. Keep your wrists straight, he said. Bend your knees. Look where you're going to land. She touched my elbow, steering me like a shopping cart with a broken wheel. Let's talk, she whispered. We talked in the hallway between a vending machine that only sold optimism in bottle form and a framed poster of a smiling doctor who promised everything could be prevented if you got enough steps. Her eyes were glassy with sincerity. I hate sincerity when it arrives late. It's not what you think, she started, which is the password to a club nobody should join. He's just helping me with my startup idea. Your startup? I repeated, like an owl with disbelief. She had never started a blender without asking me where the lid was. What idea needs a man who carries his car keys on a retractable belt reel? She flinched. Don't be cruel, she said. Victor owns pharmacies and a gym chain. He's mentoring me. Mentoring, I said. The word tasted like dust. Is that what they call it when lipstick moves from amateur to professional? She looked at the floor as if the floor could forgive her. I was going to tell you, she said. When? I asked. When the retirement plan vested? Victor, because why would he not, walked by at that precise moment carrying 2 bottles of water and the kind of smile that has survived many birthdays. Hydrate, he said, placing a bottle in her hand like a medal. He offered me one. I took it. I am a coward in small ways. I went home alone. She texted later, we need to talk tonight. When night arrived, it wore a hat that said suspicion. She came after, smelling like lemon lozenges and borrowed weather. We sat on opposite sides of the couch like rival nations pretending geography is enough. She told me about Victor's stories, how he rebuilt himself twice, how he got sober, how he teaches people to breathe on purpose. She said he listens. She said he sees her. I used to think I saw her. I saw the shadow of what I wanted. That's not vision, that's projection. I didn't sleep with him, she said. I stared at the carpet, which suddenly looked like a topographical map of bad decisions. Yet, I said. She stood. She paced. She made a figure eight that looked like infinite anxiety. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. That part felt true, because confusion was her fragrance long before lemon lozenges. A reasonable man would go home and trust. I went to Golden Horizons. The lobby looked like an aspirational cruise ship, fake palms, endless beige, a bowl of mints that tasted like flavored regret. A sign-in sheet sat next to magazines from when people still cared about fax machines. I scribbled a fake name, Evanescence, the state of my self-respect, and followed a muffled bass line down the hall. The gym smelled like antiseptic and old victories. And there she was. Not doing yoga. Not doing anything that stretched the body. She stretched the truth. She stood next to a stationary bike, laughing, not at me, because I was a ghost in my own life, but at a 60-year-old man with silver hair slicked back in a way that forced you to remember mirrors exist. He wore a white tracksuit, zipper halfway to confession, and a gold chain like a second sun. He patted the bike seat with an open palm as if blessing it. My heart made a noise I didn't know hearts could make. I watched her touch his wrist, as if checking his pulse, as if she cared about the rate at which time lapped him. He leaned in, said something, and she threw her head back like a documentary narrator reacting to a plot twist. Their bodies made parentheses around a secret I wasn't invited to read. I didn't storm in. I'm not a storm. I'm a drizzle that pretends to be indifferent. I hid behind a poster for pickleball tournament, all welcome, and let the lemon cologne smell baptize me into a denomination I had not chosen. He saw me first. That's the worst part. He turned, eyes sharp and oddly kind, the way a surgeon might ask you about your weekend before rearranging your insides. He lifted a hand regal, fatherly, and I felt the finger of fate flick my forehead. Hey, champ, he said, because of course he called me champ. You looking for the pool? Chlorine's this way. She turned. Her face did a slideshow, shock, guilt, denial, and then the theater mask of cool. Babe, she said, as if I'd wandered into a farmer's market and not the scene of the crime. What are you doing here? Getting old, I said. Figured I'd practice. The man introduced himself as Victor, which is either irony or destiny. He offered me his hand. I shook it. His palm was warm and dry, like a fresh towel folded by a man who had never folded a towel in his life because he hired people to fold time for him. We were just talking about bikes, he said. You ride? It was a question, but it was also a thesis statement. Do you, young man, possess momentum? I walk, I said. Away, mostly.